Okay, so it looks like the numbers are slowing down, so let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the February 2025 Q&A session for the California Bar Exam. I'm Natalie Leonard. I'm the Principal Program Analyst working with educational standards, so law school students and applicants. And we have our admissions team leadership here. I'll ask Bridget to introduce herself.
Oh, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Bridget Grammy. I'm the special counsel here at the State Bar working with the admissions team.
And our admissions director, Audrey Ching.
Hey, I already started trying to answer some questions. Sorry, I'm Audrey Ching, the director of the Office of Admissions. Thank you all for joining us today.
And our director team, let's start with Tara Clark.
Hello, my name is Tara Clark. I'm the director of operations for the Office of Admissions.
And Cody Hunanian.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Cody Hunanian. I am a program director in the Office of Admissions as well.
And Amy Nunez.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Nunez. I'm the Director of Administration and Examinations.
And very soon we'll hear from our O&M team, but let's have you introduce yourselves just quickly now. Becky Romero.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Becky Romero, and I am the Program Manager for Operations and Management for the Office of Admissions.
And Matt Yates.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Yates. I am the Principal Financial Analyst in the Office of Admissions.
Thanks. And I'd like to thank Teresa Selensky, also from our Educational Standards team, for coordinating this meeting and inviting everyone who's here today. Okay, well, welcome everyone. So we've got about 2,000 people on the line joining with us. We'll make this as orderly as we can. While we don't have the chat feature enabled, we do have a Q&A box. If you've sent a question before, we have received it and incorporated it into the presentation, potentially the FAQs, or potentially a personal response through your applicant portal. Today, we'll start with a presentation from our exam development team. We will also continue to answer Q&A questions, potentially giving some public answers to the questions that you submit to us. If your question is not answered today, or you have another question after today, then we encourage you to send us questions through your portal so we can get to them as quickly as possible. Okay, so I'd like to start by introducing our exam team. Amy and Matthew and Becky will be showing a PowerPoint to kick things off.
Great. Thank you, Natalie. And one of the things that Natalie mentioned is that what we did for this PowerPoint presentation is use the questions that we've received prior to this session today. So our material is based on those questions. And so we're asking people to hold off questions to the end. We'll open it up. I know people are submitting questions through the Q&A. That's not a problem, but we will pause once presentation's done to address anything that was not addressed in this PowerPoint. And so with that, I'll get started. So next slide, please. So today we're going to provide you with the essentials, the essential updates and details about the February 2025 California Bar Exam. And as you may recall, in October of 2024, the Supreme Court approved the administration of a remote and in-person exam, and the in-person component will be taking place at measured learning test centers, as well as what we're calling like pop-up centers around the state. So test centers, like I mentioned, will be managed by Measured Learning. There are locations with locations in California. I mentioned that there are 4 pop-ups, and people are can elect to test at those centers. So locations are available in Pacific and Mountain time zones for those that wish to take the exam in person. For people taking the exam remote, one thing that's very important is that applicants will need to meet specific technological requirements. We're going to jump into those, but it's that is the reason that a mock exam is required of everyone, is that these technology requirements need to be met to ensure that your computers are compatible with the software. If you have testing accommodations, The testing accommodations unit are evaluating your request and letting you know about if your accommodation is compatible with remote proctoring. Applicants requiring hard copy materials will need to test in person. These are not compatible with remote testing. We'll get into that soon. And so one important thing to note here is initially we opened the exam with the idea that with the intent to have people internationally and nationally be able to test at remote test sites. However, the CBE implemented a policy that says everybody has to test in Pacific Standard Time. And as a result, the only applicants that can test in person, as I mentioned earlier, are people in the Pacific and Mountain time zones. So if you're outside of Pacific Mountain time zone, you will not be able to test in person. Those applicants will have to test remotely or can come and test in person at a site in California. Those are the two options for anybody wanting in-person testing outside of these two time zones. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the questions we've been getting a lot is about hard copy material or getting a hard copy version of the exam. So regardless of whether an applicant has signed up to take the exam in person or remote, most applicants will not receive hard copy material. Applicants testing on a laptop or a desktop will not receive hard copy materials. Only handwriters and applicants who've been granted hard copy exam material as a testing accommodation will receive hard copy material. So anybody who's taken the bar exam before probably experienced coming to the test site and getting a hard copy version of material and taking it on a laptop. That is no longer the format of this exam. So I just want to highlight the questions will be delivered on a laptop. Applicants testing in person will be provided a laptop. Applicants are not able to bring their own laptops to any test center in person. Applicants will be provided laptops. I just want to repeat that. That's a very different format for anybody who's taken the exam before than we've had in the past. So Measured Learning is supplying the laptops. If you're testing in person, regardless of whether you're testing at a Measured Learning test site or one of the pop-ups that I mentioned. So let's jump into the two modalities. So remote testing. Applicants must use their personal computer and it must have a functional microphone and a webcam to take this exam. And applicants should review the minimum system requirements in the FAQ. They're posted on our website to address any concerns or questions that you might have. As many of you know, we conducted an experiment testing the Measured Learning platform as well as some of our multiple choice questions this past November. It was part of a larger experiment. It was phase 1, and it occurred in November. And we had about around 300 people that had technical issues, and their technical issues were related to some of the minimum system requirements. It's very important that people are conscientious about the RAM requirement. I think that's where most people got stuck is those that had technological problems is the RAM requirement was not adhered to. So that is one area that we want to highlight that we learned from this not the mock, but from the experimental exam that people could need to adhere to. Also, work or school computers are not recommended for this exam to be used during the exam. The reason is that work or school issued laptops may prevent you from downloading exam software due to firewalls or accessing the required programs needed to take the exam. So one of the requirements when you're logging into the system is that your system is free of software. And so if you're using a work or a school issued laptop and you don't have administrator rights, you will not be able to proceed. So we don't recommend that you use those laptops. Remote takers are required to take a proctored exam, that I mentioned earlier, and that will ensure that your computer is capable of handling the software, the live proctoring feature, and also, more importantly, too, is for applicants to test the functionality on their personal computer. So you'll get to discover, how the cut and paste works and how highlighting works in the system. Everybody will be able to do that. So getting to test the functionality of the system is an important critical step that people should be taking. Also, you may only use one mouse and one keyboard during the exam. Things like display monitors, additional monitors, or split screens are not permitted for this exam. Applicants testing in person. So people who are testing in person will be provided a computer, I've mentioned this now multiple times, to use during the exam. And this includes keyboards and mice. So people will have a mouse provided to them. Applicants testing in person using a measured learning provided computer will be required to take an unproctored exam. So you can take that exam. You don't need to schedule an appointment to take that exam. You will be taking that exam without a proctor. And the most important part of that is you're going to be testing the functionality, like I mentioned earlier. Everybody will have the same functionality, but it is an opportunity for those that are testing in person to test what exists in the system. Applicants testing in person will not be able to take the mock exam in person. And so in that sense, you do need a personal computer just for that mock exam. Since a mock exam is unproctored, it'll allow the applicants to test the functionality prior to coming to the test center. So you don't see the functionality for the first time at the test center. It's the best way to familiarize yourself with the system. Applicants that are assigned to write the exam, so these are handwriters, do not need to take the mock exam. And additional information about what's permitted and prohibited at the exam site or even remotely will be provided as I think by next week, or if not at the end of this week. Also, one thing I want to highlight is the minimum system requirements. I mentioned that those will be in the FAQ. And also we're part of that weekly email blast, but people should look at that to ensure that their laptops are compatible. All right. Now, I think I now hand it over to Becky.
Thanks, Amy. And in the meantime, thank you to everyone who is writing questions into the Q&A. We're answering those as quickly as we can. And a common question we got was whether or not this program will be recorded. And in fact, it will. And we'll post it on our FAQ page as soon as we can. But in the meantime, we encourage you to stay as long as you can today, and also to review the bulletins and FAQs, which will continue to be informed by the types of questions you ask today as well. So thank you, everyone. And welcome, Becky.
Thank you. So I will be discussing the mandatory mock exam. So all remote applicants must complete a proctored mock exam. There's a couple of steps. The first one has taken place, and that was done between January 13th and the 20th. Step 2 is taking the mock exam. And the exam has been taking place. It started on January 17th and it'll end on January 23rd. All in-person laptop applicants must complete an unproctored mock exam. So no scheduling is required for this. All that you have to do is take the mock exam between January 17th through the 24th. Writers are not required to take the mock exam. However, I do want to emphasize that failure to complete the mock exam will result in not being eligible to sit for the exam, and no refunds will be issued for applicants failing to take the corresponding mock exam. And with that being said, applicants who participated in the phase 1 of the bar exam experiment back in November also had the chance to test the new multiple choice questions and exam software. And as mentioned in the previous slide by Amy, applicants testing remotely were required to take a mock exam that assesses whether the laptops met the system requirements and whether it's compatible with the measured learning exam platform. If applicants do not take the mock exam, they will not be allowed to sit for the exam. And applicants who take the mock exam and discover that their computer system is not compatible with measured learning platforms should seek a different type of laptop or computer. They will have the opportunity to retest that system as long as availability exists in the testing window. Applicants testing in person using a computer will be given an opportunity to take in a proctored mock exam. The mock exam provides applicants with an opportunity to become familiar with the platform functions. And just want to emphasize that writers are not required to take the mock exam. And again, remote applicants must take the proctor mock exam because before they are allowed to sit for the bar exam. And in-person computer applicants must take an proctor exam that are not required to schedule an appointment. And I'm emphasizing on this, as Natalie and Amy had stated, a lot of these questions are questions that we're getting. So hopefully this will answer your question. Next slide, please. So here we have a sample of what the exam day schedule will look like. On day 1, the essays and the performance will take place. So it'll be a 5 one-hour session and a 90-minute performance test session. So this is just an idea to give you an idea of what to expect on the first day of the exam. So day 1 includes the 5 essay questions and the 1 performance test, and the breaks are scheduled for all modalities. There's a 5-minute break between each question and a 45-minute lunch break. Regardless of whether you test in person or remotely, the schedule applies uniformly. And the full exam schedule, including specific break times, will be posted on the State Bar website. And for remote test takers, you'll also need to log back into the exam session after breaks, during which a room scan will be conducted by your proctor. Next slide, please. And here we have a sample of the exam day schedule for day 2. So day 2 will consist of the multiple choice questions. There's 4 90-minute sessions with 50 questions each and a 5-minute break between sessions and room scannings before resuming. And with that being said, day 2, it pretty much follows the same format that we have practiced in the past, where it will consist of 200 multiple choice questions divided into 4 50-question sessions, each lasting 90 minutes. And this information will be provided to the applicant prior to the examination as to what schedule you're going to fall under. And with that being said, I will now present over to Matthew Yates.
Thanks, Becky.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Yates. As I mentioned earlier, I will be going over the remaining slides for you. So the Measure Learning platform will allow for highlighting, copying, pasting, and annotating. Adjusting the font is a simple feature in the Measure Learning platform. In the top right corner, there is a sliding adjustment that will let you increase or decrease the font size to your preferred size. Another feature is you can use normal keyboard shortcuts to do some of these things, such as using Control+C to copy and or Control+V to paste any information that you have highlighted and copied in the platform. Due to the way the exam platform is organized, in order for applicants to see the question and answer box at the same time, it is suggested that applicants copy and paste the question to the question notepad so that they can view the question and answer box at the same time. Applicants must use the shortcuts mentioned in order to copy and paste the entire question to the notepad. I have noticed that sometimes selecting certain information in the question doesn't allow for copying. So it's best to just highlight everything and then use the shortcuts on your keyboard, such as Control+C to copy and then Control+V to paste. Next slide, please. So we recognize that the proctoring software's chat notifications can be distracting when proctors enter and leave conversations. However, maintaining this functionality is essential to ensure a smooth, secure, and compliant exam experience. We will continue to explore ways to minimize disruptions while preserving the integrity of the exam environment. It is important to note that the prohibited items, if these items are found on you or around your testing area, the proctor may intervene and have you remove the item, causing distractions. They may result in exam violations as well. You will not be allowed to leave the view of your camera for any reason during the session. You also may not be able to leave the computer at an in-person test center during the exam session. However, the enforcement of that rule may change from proctor to proctor or from test center to test center. The breaks are built into the exam schedule so that you may use the restroom or get water during these breaks to avoid having to do so while the exam is in session. Any reported violations of this rule may result in a Chapter 6 violation. Next slide, please. Food is not allowed for any applicant unless it has been previously approved by our testing accommodations department. Each session will contain one question. You will not be able to go back and forth between questions in the middle of a session, and you will not be allowed to return to a question once you have submitted that question or submitted your answer. It is advised that you use all time allotted to you to fully answer your questions. Applicants will not be able to bank time and add it to their next question. Applicants are reminded that they cannot leave view of the camera until their schedule breaks. The multiple choice portion of the exam is different in that there will be 50 questions per session for a total of 4 sessions. You will be able to go back and forth between the set of questions given. For example, if you're in the first multiple choice question or multiple choice session, questions 1 through 50, you can skip to any question within that range of questions. You'll also be able to flag questions you want to come back to. However, once the session is ended or you have submitted your responses, you will not be able to go back to that set of questions to change any answers. Next slide, please. Permitted and prohibited items for remote testing. For February 2025, remote applicants are permitted to use their own whiteboard, provided it does not exceed 8.5 by 11 inches in size. Multiple colors of dry erase markers are allowed for note taking. Remote applicants may also have their cell phone with them, but may only be used in the event of a computer issue and during the check-in process. Dual, split screen, or external monitors are not allowed. A bulletin containing a list of all permitted and prohibited items will be sent out to all applicants next week. Next slide, please. For remote applicants, you must present a valid government-issued photo ID to verify your identity. You will also be required to do a room scan prior to starting your examination. Your exam sessions will be monitored and recorded using your webcam and microphone. If you attempt to bypass these features, your exam will be canceled. It is important to the best of your ability to ensure your face is always in the view of the camera. Any deviation from this may result in the proctor disturbing you, asking you to return to the view of your camera. For in-person computer applicants, when you arrive at the test center, you will go through a security check. They may ask you to roll up your sleeves or pant legs and/or ask you to pull out your pockets to ensure there are no prohibited items on your person. Any items found on you or personal items brought to the test center will need to be left in a designated lockers provided at each location. You will not have access to them until the exam session is ended. Restroom access may be available during the session, but you will not be given extra time to do this. Please try to take any bathroom breaks during the built-in breaks or during your lunch. Next slide, please. The State Bar does offer a couple of resources for attorneys, law students, and applicants of the bar exam. If you have been impacted by the wildfires in Los Angeles, please email wildfire.emergencies@calbar.ca.gov to discuss potential options for you for the upcoming exam. The State Bar of California Lawyers Assistant Program also offers free confidential support for anyone listed above, the attorneys, law students, and/or applicants. Next slide, please. Additional resources can be found on our website, including important filing deadlines, as well as FAQs for the upcoming exam and FAQs about the application process, plus any other miscellaneous items. We will also send out weekly emails starting 6 weeks before the exam, which will highlight important approaching deadlines, updates to the exam, and any information that applicants need to know. Once again, the bulletin for allowed and prohibited items will be provided to applicants soon, and it can be expected next week. Next slide, please. To make sure you receive the required emails, it is important to make sure you have updated your email settings to allow emails from the State Bar of California or Measured Learning to reach your inbox. The State Bar and the Office of Admissions have started sending out weekly blast emails to applicants in order to provide you with current events, updates to the exam, and deadlines. You should have already received emails from Measured Learning about creating an account and scheduling mock exams. Hopefully you have completed these steps, as it will greatly assist you in moving through the exam process. Lastly, take your mock exams. If you are testing remotely, you should have scheduled a mock exam and should be preparing the computer you will use for the bar exam so the exam runs smoothly. If you fail to get your computer prepared by making sure it meets the system requirements, you will have issues on exam day or may not be able to test at all. So get your computers prepped. The mock exam is the best way to ensure your computer can run the exam software provided by Measured Learning. If you are testing in person, please keep in mind you are not required to schedule your mock exam. All you need to do is log in and follow the instructions provided by Measured Learning to take the mock exam. You will be required to use a personal computer to take the mock exam. It will allow you to test the functionality of the exam platform. However, you will not use a personal computer during the bar exam. Measured Learning will be providing a computer for you to use at their test center. Next slide, please. In summary, the February 2025 California Bar Exam offers flexibility and new opportunities with rigorous integrity and technological measures in place. Whether you're testing remotely or in person, preparation and adherence to the guidelines are key. At this time, we'll take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Before we go, thank you, Matt. Before we move on, we did skip one slide that I'd like to highlight. Can we go to slide number 5, if that's possible, on important deadlines? And I think it's important to highlight because some of these deadlines have passed, so just so everybody is clear on what steps are available to everyone right now. We've received some text about people having missed the mock exams, so I just want to clarify that. And if we look at these deadlines, I think it'll help. So, so all mock exams, as you can see here, they need to be scheduled between January 13th and January 20th. So yesterday was January 20th, and so if you have not scheduled a mock exam, that window has closed. If you had a scheduled appointment and you missed it, or had technological issues that you couldn't get through, you can contact Measured Learning now to reschedule that appointment. So unless you fail to schedule your mock exam, if you fail, you will not be able to to sit for the California Bar Exam. So if you missed it, this is the time to contact Measured Learning.
Amy, can I ask a question on a similar topic? Some people said that after they took the mock exam, they decided they would like to upgrade their computer or purchase another computer, and now we're past that deadline. What would be the best course of action for them in this case?
Well, there's two different answers. So if you're taking the exam in person and you took the mock exam on your laptop, and now you have a new laptop, there's no bearing in terms of needing to take another mock exam because you're going to be supplied a laptop at the exam site, at the test center site. If you're taking this remotely, you should be testing the system, but the window for that opportunity has closed. So I recommend that you use a laptop that you took the mock in if you're taking it remotely. So, let me just walk through what that would look like. I have a laptop. I took the remote exam, the proctored exam on that laptop, and now I have a new laptop. Should I use my new laptop for the exam or the one that I used for the proctored mock exam? I recommend using the one for the proctored mock exam because you've already assessed that and confirmed that your laptop is compatible. I would not use a new laptop because the window has closed for that that person. We know that their system was compatible with their initial laptop.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure. All right, so the mock exam completion deadline for remote applicants is January 23rd. The mock exam completion deadline for in-person applicants is January 24th. Now, if you schedule your mock exam and you just end up not taking the mock exam, I want to highlight you will not be able to sit for the California bar exam. Also, the deadline to change your exam modality was on January 20th. And I want to explain what we mean by exam modality. So when you first registered to take the bar exam, you were able to select whether you wanted to take it in person or remotely. And so this is the exam modality. So this means, like, as of yesterday, you cannot switch between a writer, a laptop taker in person, or remote taker. Those modalities, you're locked into that after the 20th. And part of that has to do with the scheduling of the mock exam. That deadline was also the 20th. So this will allow applicants to have the mock exam that's compatible with the way that they're going to be sitting for the bar exam. Now, another question we've been getting a lot is, when will people be able to to schedule their bar exams? Starting on January 30th, Measured Learning will be sending applicants who completed their mock exams, and also to handwriters, an invitation to schedule their bar exam. Applicants will be able to schedule their bar exam starting on January 30th. They'll get to select the time slot and test center once the bar exam scheduling windows open. And that is going to be open through February 14th. If after you have scheduled an exam date, you decide you need to change to a new test center, you will be able to do that, but it requires canceling your previous appointment in order to choose a new test center or location or time. You have until February 3rd to make those changes to the test location. But like I mentioned, not modality. This is, again, selecting between whether you want to take it, at test center X or test center Y. As a reminder, seats are limited and available on a first come, first served basis. So we highly recommend that you book your appointment as soon as possible, as soon as you get your invitation. And again, they start they're going to start sending these out on January 30th. Applicants, I already mentioned this, needing to change a format. The deadline was January 20th, and that has passed. Also, applicants who want to test their changing location, like I mentioned, you can do it through February 3rd. And to do so, you must contact Measured Learning to make that request. And you can do that through your Measured Learning scheduling portal. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So people are continuing to submit questions online, which is terrific. You're welcome to submit them anonymously, as some of you have. If you feel comfortable identifying yourself, I would encourage you to do so. That helps us to follow up in the portal if you need a very specific answer, and some of the questions that we received have been very specific. So, that could help us to help you. Okay, so thinking about some of the different areas where we've received a lot of questions in the Q&A, I thought maybe we could go by area and highlight some of the key questions. First of all, we talked a little bit about the mock exam, and I wondered if, Cody, any specific mock exam questions that you've seen in the Q&A might be ones that you might want to highlight as far as functionality, the highlighting function and the cut and paste function?
Sure. Well, yeah, there were certainly a great deal of questions related to functionality. So I'll take a stab at explaining the different functionality within the exam platform, and definitely invite my colleagues to add on. There's been a lot of questions about, I think, the core functionality and kind of annotation tools. This would include copying and pasting, strike through text, highlight text. When an applicant is in the measure learning exam platform, where the essay and multiple choice questions are hosted, they can use those annotation features. That's the highlight, strike through, copy and paste. There's also an annotation window on the text that is associated with the question prompt or the question stem. There have been some questions about using the strike through feature to strike out the response options for the multiple choice questions. That's not currently available. In the performance test, there's the performance test file and library, which is accessed in a separate PDF viewer. And that PDF viewer has some additional annotation tools. So that PDF viewer includes all of the standard ones, copy and paste within that viewer, highlight, and some additional annotation tools. It also includes some kind of organizational tools. You can search the text using keywords. You can navigate the file and library for the performance test using headers. And there's some other functionality that we think will really improve kind of an applicant's ability to sift through all that material. I think that really covers it. I guess one other note that I'll add, and this was written as kind of a notification within the mock exam, but during the mock exam, you could not copy and paste text from the file and library for the performance test into your response field. That is going to be available for the February exam. It was not live for the mock exam, and we tried to communicate that, but I want it to be clear that that will be something that's available come February.
Thanks, Cody. Another question we received related to the mock exam was regarding confirmation when things were done. Can we clarify what applicants can expect to receive after they've completed everything they need to for the mock exam? Or is it best that they refer to certain documentation?
Well, I mean, I can add some context here as well. So the purpose of the mock exam is sort of twofold. One, it gives an applicant an opportunity to become familiar with all of these annotation tools and different features. But it's also an opportunity for someone to confirm that their computer equipment works properly and just generally address any issues. It is not something that's scored. So when an applicant reaches the end of their mock exam, there is a confirmation window that provides a status that says completed. What that means is that when we at the State Bar look at whether or not an individual has completed their mock exam as required, all we care about and all we need to know is that you have completed your mock exam. Or we aren't grading, we're not reviewing your responses or anything like that. So that being said, if you've reached that final window, the status window, and you've seen your status completed, you've completed the mock exam for this purpose. And I think the next thing you should be looking out for is the actual February exam window, scheduling window, which will be communicated on January 30th. Amy, I saw that you unmuted. Perhaps you wanted to add some more there.
One thing I just want to add is also eligibility. So for those of you that we opened the mock exam to everybody regardless of their eligibility status, so that the things we'll be checking for in order to alert note that measured learning send notice for somebody to be able to schedule their exam is eligibility as well as completion of that mock exam, as Cody suggested.
Okay, great. We've also received some questions about the test centers. Some people have asked if they're able to go see the test center on a day prior to their actual exam, and if that differs between whether they choose a standard test center or a pop-up. So when there were live exams at convention centers that the State Bar offered, you could look in from outside the doorway the day before. Is there any type of similar option available here?
Currently, we do not have that option. We have not asked our vendor to make this allowance. You're absolutely right. Whether you were a testing accommodation applicant or a standard applicant, applicants were able to come the day before at a specific time to peek at the testing facility. But it is something that we can bring back to our vendor and make that request and see if that's feasible. Part of it is, they are going to be administering the California bar exam for the first time. So I don't know how feasible this will be, but we will bring it back. And that's something that if it is allowed, we will add it to our FAQs and to the weekly email reminders. So, the answer to that question, Natalie, is essentially like, we'll make the request to our measured learning and keep everybody posted. If they are agreeable, then we will update everybody in that weekly email reminder and in the FAQ.
Okay, another question we received had to do with when the choice of center page opens, will all of the choices be available not only in California, but the valid choices that are outside of California? How can someone be sure that they're choosing a test center that will be appropriate for the California bar exam?
So when you are scheduling, it's our understanding that when people are scheduling in the platform, they're going to be asked to enter their zip code, and that zip code anchors the testing locations in their area. So if they wish to test in another location that's not in their zip code, they'd have to enter that zip code.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. We've also received quite a few questions around breaks and beverages. So could we just confirm during the break period? Well, first of all, during the exam in general, is water allowed at the session?
Yes. So applicants testing remotely are allowed to bring a 32 ounce clear container for water. So they're allowed to drink water during the exam. And then applicants testing in person cannot bring the same equipment. They'll be supplied water at the test site by the measured learning test site. So there's no need to bring anything with them. It's my understanding they won't be able to bring it perhaps to their chair, or they'll have to get up and get it. But there will be water supplied at the test centers, and then applicants testing remotely can bring water to their desks.
Okay, and they should plan on water as the beverage that is available. The next most common question we got is coffee allowed during that time?
Yeah, we're limiting it to water.
Water?
Yeah,
Okay.
in the event of spills and so on.
Okay, another question we got was during the breaks, are people allowed to look at their study materials? And is the answer different during the break period versus the lunch period?
So we want this exam to reflect the actual exam, our previous modalities. And so you could not bring notes. You could not go to the bathroom and take a peek at things during your break. And so we're going to be consistent with that policy. So applicants are discouraged from looking at notes. Everybody has a 5-minute break. And so you have a 5-minute break. We recommend that you need to do what you have to do to use it as a bathroom break or water. But we want to be consistent with previous administrations, and notes should not be accessible. And that time period, 5 minutes, goes very quickly. And we're going to be strict about people returning to their seats and getting back, whether it's a remote exam or in person. And so the answer is no, you should not be bringing notes or looking at notes during your breaks. And that also want to highlight at the same time that a 5-minute break can move very quickly.
And they should otherwise, other than the break period, they should plan to be at their seats during the testing period. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And I appreciate everyone's patience. We are looking through many, many questions and trying to summarize the ones that are most popular. Please know that every question is important to us, and we will be looking at all of them. We're just trying to we're trying to look at the most popular right now. Okay. Next.
While we're waiting, could I just mention the test sites that are available in the event that people have not seen them? So people were testing in person. I mentioned that I called these sites pop-ups, but the larger facilities, there are 4. There's one located in Los Angeles. It's the Ontario Convention Center. In Sacramento, we'll be using the grounds in Roseville. In San Francisco, the facility will be the South San Francisco Conference Center. And in San Diego, we'll be at the Chula Vista Elite Athlete Training Center in Chula Vista.
We received a question. I want to go back to the mock exams because we received this question a few times. If someone has scheduled a mock exam and they take it on the last day and their computer fails the mock exam, what options do they have, if any?
So if it's on the last day, it's past the exam scheduling period. But I think if you didn't have a successful event, you could immediately schedule one maybe on that same day, as long as it happened, there's still a window frame. So obviously, if it's on the last day, the attempt is to try to schedule a makeup course, a makeup mock exam on that same day. This is all subject to availability, so we can't promise that you'll be able to take that mock exam. But those that are unsuccessful, these are our retake days, the last 2 days, the 24th and the 25th. So it's very important that people act swiftly.
Okay, thank you. I have a few technical questions that have come up for a few times. For those that decide to take the exam remotely and are in their own space, what should be the step they would take if their Wi-Fi goes down? And 2 scenarios. First scenario is Wi-Fi goes down permanently. They're not able to complete the exam. Then we'll be aware of the status and how much they have been able to complete. But they also wonder if there is a glitch in the Wi-Fi, if it should go down and come back up. What can they expect technically if that would happen?
In terms of technical assistance, I think the first thing that's very important is to contact Measure Learning. We don't have the subject matter expertise at the State Bar to be able to handle somebody's technological questions. So that's very important. And so it's my understanding that if you're in the system and you have either of those scenarios, like your system goes out and it comes back, your internet, you have an outage. If you're able to get into the chat box, that's one way to connect to the technology assistance. If you're not, then you can also call, right? So I think people need to know that those are the 2 different options. Especially if you had a reboot and you can't come back to it, is to call. And so the first is through the system itself, and secondly would be to call.
Okay, and applicants can know the phone number that they need to use to call for Measure Learning and set it up as a contact in their cell phone prior to the exam if they want to do so, yeah?
Yes, that's the way to do it. And so maybe for our next weekly email reminder, we will add those numbers, the email and those numbers to that email reminder.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to take a look and see what might be some of the most popular questions that are still coming in the chat, but we also have some raised hands. So I'd like to take a few live questions in the order that they were received. Let's see. So the first person I'd like to recognize is Patricia Macedo. Please, and prior to your questions, just please, if you have a personal question about your personal situations, we would prefer that you send that through your portal or through the Q&A so we can respond to those specifically. And also, if it's a private matter, your privacy will be maintained. So welcome, Patricia. We welcome your question.
Hi. Thank you, everybody, for your patience with all our questions. So, since the PT will have a different screen, a different link, right, to click. will we be able to split the screen so we can have the answer page and the PDF on the same screen at the same time?
I can jump in here. Thank you so much for the question. Right now, as it stands, the performance test question, the question prompt and response field are in the Measure Learning platform, while the file and library are in the separate PDF viewer. And as you mentioned, those are opened in separate tabs within the window. We have heard the feedback and seen in our questions requests for kind of a side-by-side design, and we are exploring that with the exam vendor. It's not something that is complete, but we're still researching it. So that's where we're at right now, and we'll be sure to provide any necessary update. The one thing I do want to note, though, regardless of the kind of where in the platform the performance test file and library is hosted, I think we do want to highlight, just so that folks understand the features that are available there. There will still be highlight, strike through annotation, or excuse me, highlight and annotation features, as well as the search functionality that we hope provides some new features and enhancements. So anyways, I that's a long way of saying what was shown in the mock exam. The separate tab is where we currently stand, but we are exploring some possible enhancements, but nothing more that we can share at this time.
Thanks, Cody. We received a question too regarding medication. Can people keep prescription medication within reach, or any other type of medication without an accommodation? And if so, what would be needed?
So for applicants testing in person, you cannot bring medication unless you have a testing accommodation to the test site. You could bring it, but you will not be able to bring it to your test area. That will have to be kept in a locker. And I think the same goes for somebody testing remotely. You can keep your medication close to you, but in terms of your testing window or your testing area, sorry, it needs to be free of anything but, and I'll go through, if you'd like, what's permitted for a remote exam. So you could bring a dry erase board that's between 8.5 by 11, so the size of a regular size paper, with one eraser, whether it's one of those bricks or whether it's a piece of cloth, and a dry erase marker, and your water. That's what will be allowed, along with, and it's a requirement for anybody who's testing remotely, either a cell phone or a mirror, because that will be used to look at your desk area. That's part of the check-in procedures. And so, and the one thing about the phone is this is a prohibited item for the exam in general, but as part of the check-in procedures, you'll be able to use it at the check-in and then keep it at a distance that it's not accessible throughout the exam. So that is what's allowed. And then for in-person, what was the question was, what's allowed? And medication was in the context of the medication, you can bring to your desk. Measured Learning that the test sites will provide the white dry erase board and the erasers and the markers. You don't need to bring that. You just need to, the only thing that you could have with you is, gosh, it's fell out of my head. Give me 1 second. What can you bring in person? Into the test area, I think it would just be water, because everything else will be supplied to you at the test center, including the water. So I'm talking once you get to your desk, you've locked everything in the locker or wherever you will be asked to keep your belongings. The only thing that could be at your desk are the dry erase board, the markers, and water, and they will be supplying that. So there's very limited items that you could bring at an in-person test center unless you have a testing accommodation.
Thanks, Amy. We've also received quite a few questions about earplugs. Foam earplugs are permitted. People have asked about plastic or other types of earplugs during the exam.
Yeah, so earplugs are allowed, foam earplugs, but nothing, no wireless. So wireless headphones are not allowed. and then also anything that's it has to be like a foam earplug. I just want to check with Matt and Becky. That is correct, right?
You are correct.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. And then I'm going to take another question from the audience, but before I do, I'll just encourage our panel. I know that each of you are busily working on over 1,000 questions that we've received. And if you see an important question in your area that's coming up over and over, after we take this question, I would encourage any of you to volunteer that common question. But in the meantime, first, let's take a question from London Worthy, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. So my question is, I've already taken the mock exam proctored, right? Because I'm doing the remote exam. Now, there are some features that I, wasn't able to notice that some other, I guess, examinees were able to notice. And so I wanted to know, for a couple of reasons, if there is any way that the mock exam, not proctored, can be open for us to take an unlimited amount of time to get as familiar with the software itself as we possibly can. Number one, for people who need to or want to change their laptop computers. And number three, also, this was done for the experimental exam, the tutorial / mock exam for that is and was open for unlimited amount of times to take, and it's still up there to take. So I'm trying to figure out why it's just open for this one window and then shut down and close. Why can't we take it unlimited amount of times?
Thank you for your question.
I could answer that. So a couple of things. Because the majority of our applicants will be taking this exam remotely, they require a proctored exam. And so there's a limited amount of the amount of proctors that measured learning needs to make available. So we need to make not only the platform and the number of proctors that are going to handle this and technical assistants all at the same time available. So we can't make this like an endless amount. All those resources have to align in order for us to be able to provide as many slots of proctored exams as possible. And so there is a limitation to that. Also, we need to close that window then so we can start opening the window for the actual exam, which is different from the experiment where it was just this one-time event. The other thing is, the second one is that for those that are taking it remote in person, that there is their limitation of needing a proctor is not there, which is why there's an extended date that you're able to access that through the 24th, because there is no need to schedule that. And so London, can I ask, are you somebody who's taking it remotely and you did a proctored version of the exam?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and so you now want to go back in and test the platform system. You don't need the whole experience with a proctor.
Correct.
Okay, because there is, and we're going to add it to this week's weekly reminder. There's a link to the measured learning platform called Test It, and there's a way that you could test system functionality that way. So we'll add it. And then you could look at that because that might address what you're seeking to do now.
Okay, I've actually clicked on that if you're referring to the test it out, and it takes me right back to the same place where the mock exam was. So I don't know if there's an issue with that, but I understand your answer. I just have one other quick question.
Sure.
As far as if the internet goes out, if my internet goes out, and once I log back in, is my time still running while my internet is out, or will it start over? Is it stopped, or how does that go?
So when somebody's internet goes out or they're kicked out of the system, it sounds like all the system functionality stops. And so so if you were to come back, if you're able to come back in, the clock restarts where it stopped.
Okay, great. That's good news. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Does
Eh,
anyone from the panel have a question they would like to highlight before we go to the next? And I will say for those that are asking questions, we had a small number of hands raised, but now we have about 75 hands raised. We will not likely get to all of the questions during the live session, so we would definitely encourage you to put the questions into the Q&A. But are there any questions that the panel would like to highlight?
Cody, I think I had something to say.
Well, yeah, the last question, they addressed something before we moved on to another question. I just want to be clear for our audience. The tested out feature that Amy mentioned, this is where you can test your computer against the system requirements. And this is where you can find out a lot of really useful information about whether or not your internet speeds are appropriate or the memory on your computer is appropriate. The last person who was speaking mentioned that they clicked the link. It's in the email that Measure Learning sends applicants. It says click here to do the tested out feature, and that they kept returning to the mock exam page. I just wanted to provide some clarity. I think what they're referring to is when you click that link, you will go to what's called your exams page, and any exam that you've been granted will be listed there. At the bottom of that page is where the tested out button is available. So I just want to spotlight that because this tested out feature I think is really critical, and we want our test takers, especially those who are maybe getting a new computer, to use that. And perhaps that last person needed to scroll down to see that button, but it is on the exams page. It's a small blue and white button in the bottom left corner that says tested out.
Okay, and Cody, similarly, can I just confirm, will spell check be available?
So this is like I think a somewhat complicated question. The exam platform itself does not have a spell check feature. I've seen some questions come in, and I think what they're referring to is the fact that their own computer maybe has a native spell check feature, which can kind of overlay on top of different apps that you're using. So, for example, I used to have a Macintosh computer, and no matter what I was using, it was constantly looking at my text and trying to provide some sort of spell check feature, no matter what tool I was using. I think we have heard from some applicants that their computer's native spell check is kind of overlaying, and that might be the case. And but I should note that any glitches that occur from your native spell check functionality and the exam software really isn't rooted in the exam software's performance because there is no spell check kind of built into that software. So if you took the mock exam and you found that the spell check feature worked, but it was creating maybe some glitches or some problems, I would encourage you to disable your computer's native spell check feature so that you don't have any of those issues moving forward. But it's not something that can kind of be fixed in the exam platform. And we should also note too that spelling is not one of the factors that contributes to your exam's score. So you won't necessarily face any like negative consequences if you decide to disable your spell check feature on your computer so that you can avoid any glitches and how it interacts with the exam platform.
And to clarify, that's always been true, that spelling is not part of the grading, and that will continue to be true for this exam. We also received a question about whiteboards and best practice using the whiteboard so as not to appear to be looking off into a prohibited area. I wonder if there are any best practice thoughts regarding that.
I think I'm starting with a clean board is a good start. So making sure that you have no writing as you start, and I can't think of anything else that I'm not sure if there are going to be occasions where the proctor may ask to look at your board, because I do know that after each break there will be some security check-in as a procedure. So given that that's the case, my recommendation would be just to make sure your whiteboard's wiped out before you start each session.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions before we go to the audience or any comments?
Natalie, can I ask a clarifying question that I think has come up? Will individuals that are taking the exam in person need to, will they be provided a whiteboard or will they need to bring their own?
So
They will be.
I'm trying to get, so we have large centers that the Measure Learning team calls pop-ups. And I'm trying to get clarity if those will have, because those will need like hundreds of whiteboards, right? If you're at a small center, a Measure Learning center, those have whiteboards. And I'm trying hopefully in real time to get the clarification on the large centers about the whiteboards. And it seems like there's lots of whiteboard questions. So I will try to get that clarification. If not today, then it will be in the FAQ.
Thank you. Okay, let's take a question from the audience from Kamla Rahman, please.
Hi, I have a question that's I felt like should be like talked about. So how can you guys ensure fairness in allowing online applicants to schedule their exam times, particularly in safeguarding against the possibility of them being informed of essay topics in advance, and particularly as well as those with accommodations? I understand they get 4 days rather than 2. So what's to say like their friends are not going to go tell them what was on the first day of the essays so they can prepare better for the next day of the essays?
This has been how accommodated applicants testing with extra time have been tested in bar exams for, I don't know how many years, but many, many years. And those applicants, they sign an attestation about not searching out any information.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so like in regards to people taking the exam at home as well, like who's to say that they're not going to seek out the information from their friends who took it at an earlier time? So I'm under the impression that California in-person exams start at 8 a.m. So what if someone schedules their exam at home later in the day, like 2 p.m. or something like that? What's to say that their friends aren't going to act in bad faith and tell them
that is not the window for schedule. There won't be people scheduling the exam at 2 p.m. But I understand your concern. And thank you for your question. But we have had people testing over extended time for our exams for, I don't know, I want to say decades, but and people will sign attestations about not searching out that information. But thank you for your concern. I understand it.
Okay, I'd like to take another question from the audience. The next one is Kim Tara, please.
Hi, thank you. Yes, the question that was just asked, I wasn't very satisfied with the answer. I also have the same concern. Signing the attestation doesn't mean that the person will abide by it, but anyway, also I asked a question on the Q&A at 10:19 a.m. and it wasn't answered. I was wondering why, but Patricia asked it.
Did you have another question? Sorry, there's 3,000 in the Q&A, so we're trying. Did you have another question or was it answered?
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question is from Ikram Chowdhury, please.
Ikram, if you should have permission to talk if you're able to unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did not realize I was muted out. So are we allowed just one dry erase marker or we can have like multiple of them? And then I have another question.
I'm sorry, let's do one at a time because of the number, but you cut out at the end. You asked if you're allowed to have one or more of something.
Dry erase markers.
Dry erase markers? Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I think everybody's allowed. I don't think we put a number on it, but
Okay.
It seems reasonable to like bring a couple of dry erase markers.
Okay, thank you. And did you have another question, Ikram?
Yes, ma'am, I do. No, back to the mock exam. Unfortunately, I thought I had 1 full hour to just answer one question and go back. By the time I just checked the essay part, I never got to the PT part, and that's why I want to do like Ms. London does. That I want to be able to practice it. And she said that Miss Amy said that there was going to be there's a button that we can click where we can just test it out. So are you hopefully if you can request it, you guys are going to email the link to us so we can so if we have we can get a chance to go there and familiarize with the PT part of the exam and the other part that I honestly I should have gone there but I didn't. I'm sorry. But I mean I've already taken the mock. I need to take another mock. It doesn't have to be proctored, just like I said in my requests.
So Ikram, you're cutting in and out, and there are a lot of specifics to your question. It might be helpful if you could write your question or send it to us through the portal so that we can help you. If you simply want additional practice with the mock exam, you can choose the Test It button that we'll be making available and placing in the reminder this Friday. But if there's a further question, reach out to us so that we can support you.
No, you have answered my question.
Oh, terrific. Okay, thank you. The next question we have is from Katie Moran, please.
Hey there, everyone. I'm asking questions on behalf of a few graduates we have studying, so hopefully they'll be grouped in a way that you can use. The first is I saw the requirement on watches and clocks. So I know folks have been able to use analog watches in the past. I see on your list it is not allowed. How are people who are taking the bar able to see how much time is remaining, both those who are testing remotely and those who are in a center? So that's my first category here.
So time is being tracked on the platform, so people could see their remaining time based on the platform itself. So for those remote applicants, there's a timer in the system. For those taking it in person and most on a laptop, that same timing mechanism exists there too.
It's a countdown, Amy, or what?
It's a countdown, and then also no, I think it's a timer, and then there's going to be 2 reminders. And Becky, can you remind me? It's at the 3-minute mark, and then at the 30-second. I can't recall. There's 2 reminders when you're getting towards the end of a question.
5 minutes and 1 minute.
Yeah, 5 minutes and 1 minute. So there are 5-minute and 1-minute warnings.
Okay.
And the same will exist for those testing in person. The handwriters, the warnings will exist.
Okay, and then new category of questions around whiteboards. So I think Ikram asked a very fair question, given the Cal Bar has been very specific on highlighters and pencils and things like that before. So just to make sure we're all on the same page. So it's 8.5 by 11. There's not a restriction on the number of pens. I hear you saying, Amy, reasonable. Restrictions on color, how big the eraser can be, whether there can be a border, anything of that nature that people need to be aware of.
Yeah, no, we talked about either allowing like those brick erasers or some piece of cloth to erase. There's obviously we don't want somebody to bring a blanket, but so anything that's reasonable that will remove, remove dry erase off of the board.
Okay, so no weighted blanket dry erase markers is what you're saying. Okay, yeah. All right, next category of questions are around breaks. Obviously, everyone saw the schedule you posted. That was reposted here in this meeting. So I know there's about 5 minutes and then the 2 to 3 minute room scan for those who are remote. What's going to be the approach on bathroom? Obviously, that's going to be different for every examinee who's remote. What will happen if the 5 minutes expires, they want to begin the remote proctor is beginning the room scan and the person's not in the room? How's that handled, number one? And then number two, what if someone needs to get up and go to the bathroom during the middle of a question? What happens in those 2 situations?
So part of why each question is a section is to allow those instances for people to use the restroom. So that's why we encourage people to go to the bathroom in between questions, because leaving the view of the camera is prohibited. So anybody who is in the middle of a question and gets up and leaves has violated an exam rule. So we encourage people to use that time, the 5 minute allocation to do that. And then also to come back and sit for the exam, because everybody has 5 minutes And then, and everybody is scheduled with a remote proctor to get back into the question, and you don't want to miss that window, or you won't be able to proceed to the next, into that question.
Okay. Obviously, like, things happen, right? 5 minutes might not be perfect for everyone. Maybe someone who's nervous on an exam day. Are you saying they will not be able to proceed to the next section? Or are you saying they might not be able to? What are you saying?
So if too much time has elapsed between the time that somebody went to the bathroom, you go beyond your 5 minutes, you will not be able to get back into the exam if you miss that window of the check-in. So
Okay.
the 5 minutes and then the 2 to 3 minutes of getting back in. So you stay on that schedule. If you miss that period, you will not be able to get into the next into that question. So in this example, let's say you're at question, you're about to enter question 2, and you're supposed to be back in your seat at like 10:10. I'm just making up some time, and you get back, it's 10:18, and so your 5 minutes have passed. This proctor's trying to get back in. If that proctor is no longer available, you miss opportunity to get back into the exam. So people need to take their 5 minutes, keeping in mind that you have this 2 to 3 minutes to get back in. So the 5 minutes is 5 minutes. So, and we've highlighted that in the last weekly reminder. So people really should try to adhere to the 5 minutes as much as possible.
Okay. Well, you're not saying they should try. You're saying they have to, right? They will not be able to take the exam.
They will not be able to take that question.
Okay.
And then to clarify, if a person has a medical reason or need such that those breaks may not be appropriate for them, they can go ahead and apply for testing accommodations.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I read, this is still on bathrooms, sorry, but it's important, right? We all use it. What if they finish early and they submit? Can they use that time to go to the bathroom? I understand the time can't be banked, but are they allowed to walk away then?
Yeah. Right now, that is it's not allowed. What I mean by that is like leaving view the camera. We're considering even once you submit your questions and your time, you're still waiting for the next question. That is still a session because proctors will be there. So people have to take a break or can leave view the camera during the scheduled breaks. So if you have submitted your answer, you cannot leave until the break time starts.
And
Is that possible?
Katie,
is that subject to change, Amy? Just because, like, there has to be some move people can do if they have an absolute emergency in this regard, right? And it seems like the most secure thing to do would be to submit the exam because they can't reopen it. Is this subject to update, or is that the final word on this?
I don't think we've changed the policy in terms of consider the policy in terms of leaving view of the camera, but I could go back to this team. We could talk about it once more, but that is a position at the moment. But I think you make a good point, Katie, and it's been part of what we factored in is that somebody already submitted the question. So let me go back and talk about it. But right now, that is our policy.
And Katie, I want to thank you for your question and for aggregating different questions you may have had for your applicants. But at this point, I want to move on to the next questioner because we do have a lot of people in line. And if you have additional questions, I encourage you to get back into line. Thank you. So I'll recognize our next person, who is Mia Magavero, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. I did the mock exam already, and I am a retaker. So I've taken this exam both remotely, in person, and with accommodations. A couple of things that, from a retaker standpoint, the people that are taking the exam for the first time are not understanding that this is a mock exam and it's not graded. And it would be really, it would be important to put that in the forefront of what is going on. Because when I was taking the proctored exam, I had quite a few problems with the proctor, including the proctor becoming a gatekeeper. When she was doing the check around my entire room. She said because it was I work from home, so I have an office. They said because it was a workplace that I couldn't do my testing there. And shortly after, she told me I had to change rooms, and I told her I couldn't. At that moment, she went ahead and just closed out her side of the communications, thus preventing me from being able to even take the exam, the mock exam itself. I had to go out of the exam proctoring session and then go back in to hopefully get a different proctor. Thankfully, I did, and I was able to complete the mock exam, but it took me 3 hours to do so. Additionally, while they were giving the spiel, I explained, well, I asked her a couple of different questions, and she didn't have the new proctor, didn't have any knowledge about any of the additional information related to what they were supposed to be doing. And when they were checking around the room, they had me just completely remove everything when I knew this was a mock exam and not the actual exam itself. So will we have some sort of guarantee that the proctors are not going to be jumping into our exam and talking to us, interrupting our thoughts, and also being a gatekeeper and preventing us from actually being able to take the exam? Because one issue that she also had was my water bottle had stickers on it, and they didn't like that. So little things like that, I'm extremely concerned.
So, yeah, I just want to point out that the mock exam, it simulates an actual exam. So in reality, if you had a lot of things around your desk, papers and books, those you would not be able to advance in the actual
It was
exam.
I'm sorry to be direct, but no, I had a whiteboard that had work-related things on it. And she had me take a picture of the whiteboard, and that was her main concern. It was very difficult to work with these proctors. They were unflexible, and the fact that she left me alone, and didn't wasn't willing to be flexible at all with being able to take the mock exam, I have a concern that they're going to act as gatekeepers.
So,
And
yeah, at this point, we're at about 125, and it sounds like you've got a lot of specific feedback. I would encourage you to reach out to us outside
I
or to
already
send
did,
comments
and I
through
have
the
not
portal.
received I've already sent multiple emails, and I have not received any confirmation of my emails except for from Mezzanine saying that we are not responsible for any of the problems you experienced. And I'm not receiving any comments or responses back in the comment section. And I was one of the first people to make some comments. So I am not receiving the feedback. And I'm very sorry to be a butthead about it. But some of the functionalities that you're discussing are not actually true. If you were to take the mock exam as if you were an exam recipient, I would recommend that, because it's very different than what you guys are explaining to us, including the fact that it's all online and it's very easy to open up multiple other windows at the same time. It's very unsecure and you can't see things at the same time, which makes it very difficult. And I see there's a future possibility of people putting their exam answers in the wrong space. I'm just saying that there needs to be some significant looking at the platform itself and how test examiners look at it from that perspective.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback, and we're going to move on to, I understand some of the panelists have received some questions that they would like to mention that have been coming up in the chat. One of the questions has to do with testing accommodations timing, and will someone with testing accommodations be able to choose their site as of the 30th, or might it adjust depending on what their accommodations, approved accommodations would be?
So somebody with testing accommodations, when they go and schedule their exam, would do the same as a standard applicant. That is, look for the zip code that they need to test in, and then the idea is that the test site that there's availability for testing space in that zip code. So it's not contingent on somebody's accommodations, but more on the availability for a test center to be in that area and that the space is still available.
We also received a question about choosing spaces for the remote exam. Several people noted that they have roommates or they might live in an apartment building. And if on exam day there is, for whatever reason, an outside source such as music going through the wall or banging or something like that, that it's understood that that is out of the control of the applicant.
We recognize that sometimes people, choose an environment that changes on that day of, but if it's disruptive to the point that, like it's a threat to exam security, that's a different story, right? So I think, I think people, we are aware that people cannot control their environments. We had during the pandemic, fire alarms go off and so on, and so we understand it happens.
Okay, thank you. So we are just nearly at about 1:30 now. So for those of you that have submitted questions, whether you did so beforehand or you did so here, and for those that have hands raised, we appreciate the questions. We're going to still go through everything we've received in the chat. We'll update our FAQ with the most common answers. And if you have your hand raised, but we didn't get to the question here, then we encourage you to send the question through your portal. So I want to thank all of the applicants. I want to thank all of the administrators who are here today. I want to thank you for the very specific nature of the questions that can help us make sure that we provide to you what you need for the exam for February 2025. So thank you, everyone. And there will be a recording of this session. We will post it on the FAQ page of the admissions section of our website, but we do encourage you to read the other materials that we send and also to continue to read the FAQ and also the Friday updates that we'll continue to send to all of the applicants.
I really want to thank everyone too, Natalie. Thank you for all the questions. I really am sorry because of the volume. We try to aggregate and answer questions live. But don't worry, like Natalie said, we will take your questions away. All the feedback that you have also about Measure Learning, I've been taking a lot of notes. My next meeting is with them and we will update. Please check the FAQs. I mean, I wouldn't say check them every day, but check them because this is a learning experience on our side. So your questions today have been really helpful. And we're going to follow up on these and get them back out to you so you have all the information that you need.
So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time and we look forward to updating the materials in response to your questions.